But first, Vice President Kamala Harris has enjoyed the full weight of the US media behind her, which has created an appearance that she is significantly ahead of Donald Trump. But cracks are starting to appear. Some more brave voices in the media have started asking why Harris won't do any substantive interviews.
Would it kill you guys to have a press conference? Why hasn't she had a press conference?
Listen, the Vice President and Governor Walz have been busy crisscrossing this country since the launch of this campaign and adding Governor Walz to the ticket. You saw the ways in which they went across the battleground states last week, generating rallies of thousands, 10,000 here, 15,000 there.
But Michael, you know, a campaign rally is not a press conference.
It's going to be inclusive.
Do you mind if I cut in? I mean, you know, a campaign rally is not a press conference. Why hasn't she had a press conference? She's the vice president. She can handle the questions. Why not do it?
We absolutely are going to do it. You hear her take questions as she's out on the stump, and she said last week, we're going to be having a sit-down interview here before the end of the month. What she's going to be focused on and what this campaign is going to be focused on is communicating directly with the voters that are actually going to decide the pathway to 270 electoral votes. That's why she
commit to a press conference this week?
This past week. That's why we're doing a bus tour in Pennsylvania as we head into Chicago. And it's why we'll sit down for an interview before the end of the month to make sure that we can have a deep dive conversation about the vision that Kamala Harris has for where she wants to take this country and the contrast that we're going to have with Donald Trump. We're going to have plenty of opportunities to do that throughout the rest of
but one interview by the end of the month.
This month and throughout the rest of the campaign.
I don't want to, you know, belabor this, but one interview before the end of the month. I mean, that's not a lot. I mean, can you commit to a press conference before the end of the month?
We will commit to directly engage with the voters that are actually going to decide this election. And that is going to be complete with rallies, with sit-down interviews, with press conferences, with all the digital assets that we have at our disposal.
And it isn't just political pundits noticing that Harris is trying to win this election by literally hiding from scrutiny. ESPN host Stephen Smith says that Harris has got his vote already, but has called on her to do the right thing and be present for interviews.
Joe Biden stepped aside as the presumptive Democratic nominee on July 21st. Okay? Now I'm going to look at this right now. I'm looking at my calendar because I just want to make sure. You know, July 21st was a Sunday. We've had 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 1 day since Joe Biden stepped aside. The only damn place we've seen Kamala Harris is at pep rallies. And it can't just be the conservatives. Right is right. I'm talking to my sister here. Come on now. You running for the presidency of the United States of America. You got my vote. You running for the presidency of the United States of America. What you hiding for?
Harris has plenty of policy inconsistencies which need to be probed by reporters. Her record as a hardline prosecutor is an issue, as well as contradictions between how she's dealt with the border crisis between 2020 and today. We can't do that if she hides. And even if you detest Trump, you should be furious about the prospect of somebody waltzing into the White House with barely any scrutiny just because the media hates the other candidate. That isn't democracy. That is just a farce. Well, joining me on the show this week is the Australian's Darren Davidson and Sky News contributor James Bolt. Darren, let's start with you. I think Joe Biden as well did in the last election. There was all these notions of he was hiding in the basement. It's a proven tactic for the Democrats. But even her own supporters now are saying, even if it works, even if politically it is advantageous, it's not really the right thing to do.
It's not. Biden was hiding behind COVID, and that's how he was able to do that campaign from the basement. Obviously, COVID is no longer an issue for anybody, and that reality's gone. I think it's really bizarre that she's all but telling Americans that they'll have to elect her to find out what she really believes in. That's bad enough on domestic policy, but on foreign policy, that's really, really dangerous at the moment that we're in right now, because the world's never been more dangerous than it is right now for many, many, many years. The Americans shouldn't have to read between the tea leaves to find out what her position is on the withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, China's island grabs in the South China Sea, Russia, Ukraine, Iran's nuclear build-up, and I could go on and on and on. So it really is beholden on her to come out and do some media interviews. And what makes it even worse, actually the grabs he ran were good. The CNN anchor was pretty robust there, but generally the media in the States is giving Kamala a free ride.
I agree.
So that makes this situation even worse.
I agree. And James, look, those were the rare clips that we found to kind of show this level of scrutiny. I will note that The Guardian has made this point. Lots of other journalists have made the point that she does appear to be hiding. But others in the press just seem so just overwhelmed by joy that the polls are now going in their favour, that they're turning a blind eye, and they don't want her to have this scrutiny because they need her to win.
That's the thing. And to be honest, to be fair to Kamala Harris, she did actually sit down for an interview today. And I don't know if you guys saw the hard-hitting journalist that she finally let ask the tough questions. Her running mate, Tim Walz, is the person asking her all the questions that the media haven't been able to ask her yet. So good on for Kamala for finally sitting down to a big interview. But you're right. It's simply not enough. It should be 100% of journalists should be standing up there saying, we need to hear from Kamala. And the only reason that you wouldn't is because you think that the ultimate goal of beating Donald Trump is a more worthy goal than your own journalistic importance. And this really means for me that the election is going to be a referendum on how powerful the media still is. Because if this media can obfuscate Kamala Harris, say that she's a candidate of change, even though she was vice president for 4 years, and the borders are, and that the candidate who couldn't even make it to the primaries in her own state of California in 2020 is suddenly popular with voters. If that candidate can win off the media doing those sort of PR for her, then the media is far more powerful than I think it is.
Yeah, and James, I mean, on your point as well, the campaign saying let's commit to one sit-down interview. It's not the same as a press conference where people are firing questions. There's the chaos. And Darren, let's bring you in because I think Kamala Harris doesn't have the best track record of having concise answers. And yes, Donald Trump has his weaknesses that everybody knows. And I think he gets more criticism than any other candidate out there, probably in history, probably more unfair criticism as well. But they know that she has this verbal weakness where sometimes she waffles, she talks about abstract notions in a way that are a bit cringeworthy. That's probably why they would prefer a more controlled sit-down than a press conference.
Yeah. I mean, the word salads are unbearable. The point about Trump is, he often shoots from the hip on foreign policy. His comments about dictators are pretty witless sometimes. But actually, his first-term record, particularly on Iran and the Middle East, was actually pretty favourable and pretty good and strong. Particularly compared to Biden and Harris and their performance in the foreign policy arenas. So from that perspective, Americans deserve to hear how Kamala will keep the country safe in such a treacherous world.
Yeah, well said. Well, moving on now, because Donald Trump has had a conversation with Elon Musk this week, and some journalists lost their mind over it.
Began with 40 minutes of silence and then a bropocalypse of politics. No matter how you frame it or what caused the glitch, what was finally said between Donald Trump and Elon Musk at last night's Big X event can largely be defined as a rant filled with familiar lies and lines of attack.
Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not smart. She's not a smart person. She is a radical left San Francisco liberal, and now she's trying to protect. Now she's looking like she wants to be more Trump than Trump, if that's possible. I don't think it's possible, but she wants to be more Trump than Trump. She's terrible, but she's getting a free ride.
All right, but did it do what it was designed to do, which was to put the brakes on Harris's momentum?
Well, that's not objective reporting. It's just angry and unhinged. Let's take a listen to what actually took place during the conversation.
More of a believer, I think, and a lot of people have said that to me. A lot of great people have said that to me, actually. But it was amazing that I happened to be turned just at that perfect angle. And all because I put down a chart on immigration that showed that the numbers were so great. I love that chart even more
maybe
now.
It's a sign. Maybe that's a sign.
It's an immigration sign.
You highlighted a serious issue, and at that moment, the bullet missed your, hit your ear, but missed your head. I mean.
James, I think there's a combination here of the Trump derangement syndrome, where no matter what he does, what he says, it has to be met with hostility. But I also think there is a little bit of relevance deprivation here because CNN didn't get this long-form conversation. Both of these two blokes don't really want anything to do with this media organisation. So they've managed to talk directly to voters on their own terms, and that kind of infuriates some people in the media.
Yeah, because they want to see themselves as the gatekeepers. And to be honest, to be fair to CNN there, at least the journalist or the producer or whoever wrote that script did actually take the time to sit down and watch the interview. I've got a clip here from someone who doesn't even need to wait for Donald Trump to say something before he actively calls for him to be shut down.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that?
You've heard us talk about this many times from here, about the responsibilities that social media platforms have.
That's without him saying anything, just, you know what, it's about to happen, so it should be shut down. That is a White House beat reporter. You want to talk about someone who should be the vanguard of defending free speech and holding power to account. It's this person in the room saying, what are you guys doing? And that is someone just saying, actually, you know, the state should use its power to silence a political enemy.
I love how Corinne Jean-Pierre, the press sec, is just saying, well, thank you for this question, which I very much want to answer. Not about anything we're doing, but about literally stopping our political opponent from having a conversation. I mean, and this is where it gets kind of creepy from my point of view. Yeah, they probably got a lot of stuff wrong in that interview, right? And I'm not going to defend that. But when you're speaking to somebody for hours, for an extensive period of time, and then you go back and you find verbal missteps and you try and paint the conversation as being dangerous. So I listened to that conversation, therefore there is a danger to me listening to that. That is just so against what any journalist should want. I mean, what happened just to being able to talk to people, listen to people, and form your own opinion? Yeah,
agree. I mean, it's interesting he's returned to Twitter after leaving the platform many years ago, and it just shows that he's adopting a very different approach in this election. And he's showing, you know, good for him for showing a willingness to actually go onto new platforms and be interviewed. Look, you know, Elon Musk, I would much rather see a journalist interview him than a, you know, Silicon Valley tech billionaire mogul. But at least he's putting himself out there. And I think we'll probably see a lot more of that from Trump in the run-up to the election.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, for one, I found it interesting. And I don't think you need to agree with every single word uttered between two people talking to find it interesting. They're both quite fascinating people with different backgrounds. Why would you want to put it to the White House that they should censor that?
Well, because you want him to lose. And I just, like, to take it back to the first point, is that you've got one candidate who can talk for 2 hours and, you know, he's going to get things wrong, he's going to muddle things up a bit, but he can talk for 2 hours, versus a candidate they actively have to hide from you because you're going to find out that there's not much going on there.
Point.
That's the comparison.
A good juxtaposition between the two. Let's move on, because breakdancer Raygun has broken her silence. It's been a wild week for the academic turned Olympian. Let's see what she had to say.
I didn't realise that would also open the door to so much hate, which has frankly been pretty devastating. Well, I went out there and I had fun. I did take it very seriously. I worked my butt off preparing for the Olympics, and I gave my all, truly. I'm honoured to have been a part of the Australian Olympic team and to be part of breaking's Olympic debut.
Darren, I get uncomfortable when people try to frame criticism, and I've criticised her. I've criticised her academic work. I think it is childish. I don't think it's academia. I don't think it's intelligible. I don't think it should be funded by the taxpayer, subsidised by the taxpayer. Now, us criticising her and that performance where she chose to hop around like a kangaroo. No one made her do that, right? And is it fair to say that that's a hater, that there's a hatred behind that? Because what you're kind of saying is, if you critique me, then I'm going to slander you and label you as some kind of hateful bigot. Yeah. I think that's much worse than just criticising somebody.
I agree. I feel like we're all being gaslit a little bit here. It's the good thing about all of this and the attention that Raygun has garnered is that it's actually opened up this big debate around funding and how this even happened in the first place. And I think that's a positive development. But I would much rather everyone we were all talking about, this extraordinary medal tally, particularly from the female athletes.
Yes.
And the extraordinary talent, dedication, the dedicated training over many years that's taken them to this point to win those medals, and the great coaching they've had. That's what we really should be talking about. Instead of celebrating someone failing in a really embarrassing way in a sport that isn't really a sport.
Right, it's celebrating mediocrity.
Yeah. It really is, yeah. And it's
when we have these great athletes, and James, let's bring you in here, because we do have these people that have just the most incredible thing. I mean, to win 18 golds, and there were some very close matches like the women's water polo, the Stingers with the silver as well. Some incredible moments, and then you've got the AOC, the Australian Olympics Committee, putting out these lengthy statements defending this person. I don't think it's appropriate.
Well, the thing you have to realise is that she tried to do a bunny hop and do a kangaroo thing. So, of course, we are going to talk about that, because how did that happen? So, and the idea that it's like shocking to her that this feedback, I don't know if you guys have ever like really sucked at something on a public stage, but it's not afterwards that you realise that things are about to go bad. It's when you see the guy before you. So that's when she should have tweeted, things are about to go bad for me right now, because that person was really good.
There's clearly a degree of delusion
Yeah.
based on that. It was a bit narcissistic, to be honest. She doesn't seem to realise that she had no place from a calibre point of view. She wasn't up there.
Yes, and yet if she's not in the ABC New Year's Eve coverage this week, then this year, what are we doing?